morning. Zach asked me to fill in for him on Mother's Day, and I thought, that's going to be really easy, Mother's Day. There's got to be tons of stuff in the Bible about mothers and Mother's Day and everything, right? Let me show you. This much on mothers-in-law, this much on mothers. So much for that. Apparently, mothers-in-laws have been an issue since people started getting married now. Did you know that Mother's Day is the third most celebrated holiday of the year, after Christmas and Easter? In fact, over 145 million cards are sent. 14.6 billion is spent on gifts and dinners. 69% of those gifts are flowers, by the way. And more long-distance calls will be made today than any other day of the year. So, I begin by saying Happy Mother's Day to everyone. I hope that your day is special, and honestly, every minute of it. Today we pause to say thanks for all of the hard work that mothers put in throughout the year, and we probably don't say thank you often enough. When I was reading or researching this for some ideas, I came across a story, probably some of you have heard this, I believe it's an older church story. And there was a husband who had been spending all of his time working, and he hadn't been attentive enough to his wife, and he just spent all of his time in his job, and when he wasn't at his job, he was playing golf. So the preacher had preached on family values, and he said, you know, he told all the men, you guys that are working too hard, you have to shape up. You have got to start paying attention to your children, to your wife. You have to appreciate them for all they do. After all, you're respectful to your mother. Your mom's raising your children. She keeps your house. She does everything. So this guy was really feeling guilty, because he hadn't been paying any attention to his wife. So he decided to change his life. And the time that he changed it was right around Mother's Day. So on his way home from work, and he left work early, by the way, to surprise his wife, he bought the biggest box of candy he could find. And he bought a huge bouquet of flowers for her. And he was thinking, this is going to really, she will see that I have changed. This is going to make a huge difference in her life. So he walks up to the door, and he rings the doorbell. She opens up, and he's standing there with candy, flowers, and he's singing, have I told you lately that I love you? Well, immediately, she starts crying. Huge tears are running down her face. She sobs, oh, Harry, everything went wrong today. The dog threw up on the new carpet. The toilet's leaking. The children are terrible. We're all day and the house is a wreck, and now you come home drunk. So hopefully all the moms and women here, that's not gonna be the case today. We're here to celebrate motherhood. But I realized that I talked to Scott about this, as a matter of fact. When I was thinking about this topic, I realized that a lot of people that come here will have mixed emotions today because, some people may not be able to have children, some people may be mourning losses. Some people may still be dealing with the loss of a parent. Or some women may not have a good relationship with their mother, and some people may not know their mother at all. So I pray that God will give you grace and strength as you walk through this very difficult season. When I was looking for some kind of antidote besides the intoxicated husband, which Brenda said probably wasn't a good idea, I came across a story that Irma Bombeck had in one of her books. I don't know if anyone knows Irma Bombeck, but she's pretty kind of humorous and a very insightful lady. And she wrote that I could do my story, but I'm not a mother, so you don't want to hear what it's not a good topic for me. For the first 5 or 6 years after I had children, I considered motherhood to be a temporary condition, not a calling. It was a time in my life set aside for exhaustion and long hours. And this too would pass. Then, one afternoon, with 3 kids in tow, I came out of the supermarket, pushing a car with all 4 wheels going in the opposite direction. And my toddler son got away from me. Just outside the door, he ran toward a bubblegum machine. And it had a glass dome. And in a voice that would have shattered this glass, he yelled, "Gimme, gimme!" I told him I would give him one for it if he didn't stop shouting and get in the car. And as I physically tried to pry his body from the bubblegum machine, he pulled the entire thing over. Glass and balls and bubblegum went all over the parking lot. We now had attracted a rather sizable crowd. I told him he would never watch another cartoon as long as he lived. If he didn't control his temper, he was going to be making license plates for the state soon. Tried to stifle his sobs as he looked around at the staring crowd. Then he did something that I would remember the rest of my life. In his helpless quest for comfort, he turned to the only one he trusted his emotions with, me. He threw his arms around my knees and held on for dear life. I had humiliated him, chastised him, and berated him, but I was still all that he had. That single incident defined my role. I had realized that I was a major force in this child's life. Sometimes we forget how important stability is to a child. I've always told mine the easiest part of being a mother is giving birth. The hardest part is showing up every day. Mother's Day is traditionally a day when children give something back to their mothers for all the spit they produce to wash dirty faces, all the old gum they hold in their hands, all the noses they wipe, and all the bloody knees they make well with a kiss. This is the day mothers are rewarded for washing all those sheets in the middle of the night, driving kids to school when they miss the bus, and enduring football games in the rain. An appreciation for making your children finish something. It's an appreciation day for making your children finish something they said they couldn't do, not believing them when they said, "I hate you," and sharing their good times and their bad times. Their cards probably won't reflect that, but what they're trying to say is, thank you for showing up. Now, there's a family of preachers that I know pretty well. Some of you might know them. Williamsons. Floyd's father was a preacher. Floyd's a preacher. Eric's a preacher. And Carl's a preacher. And I've heard all of them preach, and I know all of them pretty well. But if you ask me who preaches with us in the Williamson family, it's going to be Isabel. There's an old Spanish proverb that says, "An ounce of mother is worth a pound of clergy." So, but mothers aren't always perfect. My mother wasn't perfect. grandmother? Are you perfect?
No.
Celeste. Sarah actually has a young child, so she has to tell her what to do. Celeste, your mom's here. Was your mom perfect?
She said what else can she say?
Did your mom ever try to tell you what to do? So maybe not tell you, but did she ever make suggestions? I can't believe that. So, okay, that brings us to today's discussion here. The story of Mary and Jesus at a wedding. It's kind of hard to think of a woman who was more honored than Mary was. She was chosen by God to be the mother of the Messiah, and she is an impressive and most intimidating woman in Scripture. In fact, her life is so central to the ministry of Christ that one church teaches that she never sinned. This particular church believes that, she's never sinned. Maybe she didn't ever sin, but she always didn't make perfect choices, and sometimes she showed rather poor judgment, which I think all mothers do. She was chosen by God for a special task, but she was a mortal woman. In Romans, it states that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That means Mary did too. But before we get into that part of Mary's story, we need to understand the scene from the text this morning, which is actually the second chapter of John, where it discusses the wedding party. Jewish weddings were far more elaborate than our weddings are. Our ceremony might last the better part of the day and be hearty parties, but as fancy as American weddings are and can be, they still don't match the vibrancy of the Jewish culture's investment in the wedding event. The wedding started with a time of feasting, then late in the evening, the father of the bride would take his daughter on his arm and parade her and the wedding party through the streets of the village so that everyone could come out and congratulate the bride. Finally, the wedding party would arrive at the home of the groom. The wedding actually took place in the front door of the groom's house. After the wedding ceremony, the wedding party would light torches and parade the bride and groom through the streets of the town again, always taking the longest routes through the village so that as many people as possible could wish them well. And that is when the celebrations really began. For nearly a week after that, the newlyweds held an open house, and they were treated like royalty. They dressed in fancy clothes, and I was able to find some references that in some cases they actually wore crowns on their head. And the groom's family was expected to provide all the refreshments for this week of festivity. And that's what this wedding in John 2 was all about, except that they ran out of wine. Running out of wine at such a feast was, really embarrassing, because a good host always made sure there was plenty of food and drink available. But they ran out, and now there was a crisis. It's important that we understand also, though, that this is not wine that partygoers today drink. I think Zach touched on this before, but just so that you understand that. Back then, drinking wine like folks drink it today would be considered barbaric. Wine was rarely drank straight from the bottle, or straight as far as that goes. According to John MacArthur, in ancient time, wine was usually mixed with water, and there are numerous references in Greek and Roman literature that speak of wine as being watered down, sometimes by ratios of 2 to 1 to 20 to 1, water and wine. And the Jews had a similar attitude to the Greeks and Romans. And Maccabees 15:39, which is a Jewish history book written about 200 years before Christ, It says it's harmful to drink wine alone, or again, drink water alone, while wine mixed with water is sweet and delicious. It's sweet and delicious and enhances one's enjoyment. And only barbarians drank wine unmixed, and the mixture of wine and water in equal parts was called strong drink and frowned upon. So, thus, because it was a common custom to water down wine by at least 2-to-1 ratio, most wine that was drank back then at weddings and other gatherings would have had an alcoholic content of around 2%, well below the 3.2% that's necessary today to classify it as an alcoholic beverage, just so you understand. So this wedding feast wasn't anything like a drunken party, so don't think that. You really have to work at drinking this wine to get a little bit tipsy. So with that out of the way, let's get back to Mary. Some believe that this wedding was the marriage of one of Mary and Joseph's daughters. Others believe that it was another of the relatives or perhaps a close friend. But whoever it was that was getting married, Mary considered this a personal issue for her. And Mary knows there's only one man who can fix this problem. One guy at the whole wedding. And who's that guy? Who do you think it is that there's this one man who can fix that issue, that there's no wine? It's her son, Jesus, right? That's right. Only Mary's son can come to the rescue here. Jesus may be 30 years old, but he's still her boy. So she doesn't exactly ask Jesus to fix the problem. She pretty much tells Jesus to fix the problem. Verse 3 says, when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Probably something in her eyes, maybe, or an inflection in her voice, I would think, but there was probably no question that she was saying, son, fix this. Excuse me. Now her meaning is obvious, and Jesus knows exactly what she's saying. And if you look at this text, it's pretty clear that Jesus is more than a little bit annoyed here. Woman, what does that have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. The time isn't right. This isn't how things are supposed to be handled. So I mean, this is, I think in the translation that I have, it said it was dear mother, which would make it a little bit more respectful, but it's pretty obvious that it's like, this isn't my problem, you know. And I found a reference in a Message Bible. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but that's a more of a street language translation than that one that says, don't push me, which I found incredibly interesting, because that's exactly what she was doing. She was pushing Jesus. You see, Mary's a nice woman, and she was undoubtedly a great mom, and she was chosen by God for this role in Jesus' life because she was a woman of faith. God chose her because he knew she'd do a good job and do the job right. But she wasn't that much different than all the other moms that I've known, Sue, Gail, Judy. She was a little bit on the pushy side. He's 30 years old. She's still trying to run his life for him. After all, she is her mother, and this is her little boy. And I'm sensing that her request was more than just asking Jesus to solve a problem at the marriage ceremony. You know, I remember my mom when I But I think it's possible that she was maybe a little impatient for Jesus to start showing some of his skills here. You know, I mean, after all, he's the Messiah. It's time he began doing some Messiah stuff. He's 30 years old. He needs to start impressing people. And what better place than at a family gathering, where everyone can see Mary's son show off a little bit. She's trying to take control of Jesus' ministry here, possibly for her own benefit. This doesn't seem to be the only time that she's tried to take control of Jesus' ministry. In Mark 3, we read about Jesus picking out his 12 apostles and sending them out to preach and giving them authority to cast out demons. Then it says, Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard of this, they wanted to take charge of him, for they said, he is out of his mind, Mark 3:20-21. A few verses later, the family gets to the house and it says, then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. The crowd was sitting around him. They told him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, here is my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother, sister, and mother. Did you catch that? Something Jesus had done or said didn't sit well with Mary and the rest of the family. So she and her boys showed up to take charge of them. You know what that means? It means they were going to kidnap him, drag him out of there, take him home, probably feed him some chicken noodle soup, make him rest in bed, and they're not going to let him go until he promises to behave himself. I don't know if this was necessarily Mary's idea alone. My guess is that the sons may have been sitting around the dining room table talking about their half-brother. They're convinced he's going to hurt himself or get himself into trouble. And their concerns begin to affect their mom, Mary. My son is in danger. I need to do something. She's a mama bear. She knows what is best for him, even if he doesn't. And Jesus is not behaving when she thinks Jesus should be behaving. So, he's going to get himself hurt unless she intervenes. Now, the point is this. Here at this wedding, Mary was not a sinless, perfect saint. She was a meddling mom. And there were times as a mother when she just couldn't keep her hands to herself. She had to fix things for Jesus because he wasn't going to do things the way that he wanted. She wanted. Does that mean she's a bad woman? No. Let's be clear. Mary was a very nice lady, a great mom, a woman of faith, or God would not have chosen her. But she was mortal and had the same weaknesses that all mortals have. We all have. There are times when she made poor decisions. Have you ever made a bad decision? Anyone? God, I've made a few. Have you ever done something that you've regretted and wouldn't want others to know about? So did Mary, and that's what makes her story so much more powerful, because she was just like us. Think about this. Even when Mary was meddling at the wedding, she went about it in the right way. She was pushing Jesus to fix a problem that she had no business asking him to fix, which she had explained. And she didn't even worry about the fact that he actually hadn't agreed. If you look closely, Jesus never said, I'll do this. She spoke and expected it to be done. But notice, in this, she didn't tell Jesus how She simply turned and said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now the point is, mothers will make mistakes once in a while. Mothers will get angry when they're tired or when they're angry. And they'll yell when they shouldn't. They'll fail more than they'd like to admit, and they'll feel terrible. Just like Mary, they won't always do things right. But mothers will never go wrong by telling your children, "Do whatever Jesus tells you." Mary had faith that what Jesus would instruct the servants to do would be the right thing to do. She had faith that if she asked, he could do whatever needed to be done because he could do anything. And if you have that kind of faith in Jesus, you'll never go wrong in saying, "Do whatever Jesus tells you." Because you'll be wrong sometimes, I'll be wrong sometimes, but Jesus will never be wrong. No. And her faith in Jesus was well founded. This was her most powerful trait. Just because she wasn't without faults doesn't mean that she wasn't a great woman of faith. Abraham was considered a great man of faith. And yet we know at least 2 or 3 times in his life when he made bad choices, but God still held Abraham up as a man of faith. In the same way, Mary was a great woman of faith, and her potential for faith was the main reason that God chose her for her role in Jesus' life. Mary was Jesus' earthly mother. That was her great honor and her role in her life. And because God had given her that place of importance, she now had the right to call upon Jesus to do what she wanted done at this wedding feast. Because even though Jesus was God in the flesh, even though he stepped down from heaven and took on a human form, even though all that's true, Jesus was bound by the very laws that he had decreed for the rest of mankind. Do you know what law Jesus had to obey for Mary? That's right. Honor your father and your mother. She was his mother. He was bound to honor her request. She wants a miracle. He's going to give her a miracle. He literally made water into wine in front of everyone. It was publicly known what he'd done because it says of that miracle, of this miracle, he thus revealed his glory and his disciples put his faith in him. In John 2:11. She wants wine, he'll give her wine. He'll give her wine. She gets more wine than anybody at that party could possibly have drank. One estimate is that 6 stone jars held between 120 and 180 gallons. That is a lot of wine. There's no way the people there could drink all the wine that Jesus had supplied. And she doesn't just get wine, she gets the best wine. The steward complains to the bridegroom. Everyone brings out the choice wine first and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. She wants a miracle, he gives her a miracle. She wants wine, he gives her wine in abundance. And he gives her the best wine. Because nothing is too good for his mother. She asked, and he gave more than she could possibly imagine. Because she asked in faith. Mothers, faith is when you trust Jesus enough to tell your kids, your grandkids, your nephews, your nieces, don't try to tell Jesus how to fix your problems. Just do whatever he tells you, and you'll be okay. You can mess up in countless ways in your life, but if you drive home that one simple truth, you'll have done more for your family the best of mothers can. A godly mother not only believes that, she also believes that if she has enough faith that God will meet the needs of her family, as Philippians 4:19 promises us, God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Jesus Christ. That's the promise to everyone in faith. And you see, Mary had faith. She believed in Jesus. Granted, she overstepped her bounds a little bit at this wedding, but even then, she did what she did because she believed Jesus could do anything. And women, for that reason alone, she should be your heroine. She ought to be a heroine to all of us. Because as a woman of faith, Mary believed Jesus could do anything. And Mary had that kind of faith because she knew who Jesus was. And I assume that she had a pretty good idea what he'd come here to do. Her faith was why God chose her. And her faith was ultimately proven not by what she said, but by what she didn't say. It was her faith at the cross when she stood quietly and said nothing that is her greatest witness.